to the Cinderella podcast, where we watch and review every Cinderella adaptation we can get our hands on, discussing the same story over and over until we slowly go insane. I'm Liv.
And I'm Talon, and today we watched Three Wishes for Cinderella, made in 1973, which is the Czech Winter Cinderella.
We struggled with the personal descriptor for this one, because this is also the animals do not know what you're saying, honey, and the forever in disguise Cinderella. So
If after listening to this, or if you want to go out and watch it, it's on YouTube. If you can come up with a better moniker for it, please let us know.
the Snowball Cinderella, maybe? I don't know. She throws a lot of snowballs at him.
She throws two.
I think she throws a third one right at the end, which is pretty great. Anyways, so
this movie is a Czechoslovak East German film, and I personally first saw it dubbed into Russian, and at that point it was called Three Nuts for Cinderella, but there's also a UK version called Three Gifts for Cinderella. So basically, if you Google three and Cinderella, it should eventually come up.
It comes up right away, guys. I found it in less than 10 seconds of searching on YouTube.
So we watched the original Czech version with English subtitles, in which she's called Popelka, but we're going to call her Cinderella.
We sure are.
Because that's what that means. That's a direct translation.
Sure. I don't speak any languages other than English, so sure.
I double-checked that it wasn't like a name, but only one character in this got a name, which was weirdly the stepsister.
It's actually not that uncommon. Stepsisters are the most likely to have names characters.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Okay, so let's get started.
So, little detail just for our listeners. This was actually the Cinderella that kicked off the concept of the Cinderella podcast.
Yes.
Because it was about a year ago, I guess. And Talon goes, I'm sad and grumpy and I'm watching a 70s Czech Cinderella. Do you want to watch a 70s Czech Cinderella with me? And I go, I'm also sad and grumpy. Absolutely, I want to watch a Czech Cinderella. And after about 6 Cinderellas, we knew that we needed to start a podcast. So this was like an anniversary Cinderella for me. I felt very nostalgic about this.
Oh, that's what we should have called it, the anniversary Cinderella.
Wanted to say this is the anniversary Cinderella and cut out that whole other bit?
No, let's just move forward.
It's just going to be in our notes as the anniversary Cinderella.
So we start with the credits, and it's a winter scene. People are working in a village. There's children running around and playing, and you get this like energy of people getting ready for something. Mm-hmm. There's a baker carrying a bunch of food, and we see what we later know to be Cinderella carrying 2 buckets. And the stepmother is walking down the stairs and just bossing people around.
These are the greatest intro credits just in the history of ever, because there's this sort of fluty light music going on in the background, and every time something interesting happens, like someone falls over or somebody sees something interesting, we get a freeze frame of them. Mm-hmm. And it's very corny, but it really sets the stage. It really gives you a sense of what's going on. It's very immediately immersive. I don't know if they're putting those actors' names, because there are names in Czech on the screen at that time, and it's possible that those are the actors' names of the people that they're freeze framing on.
That would make the most sense, but I cannot.
I don't think that's what's happening.
I don't know.
But anyways, it's delightful. It's the best opening sequence.
There's the guy that tries to steal food off the baker's tray, and the stepmother yells at him to put it back, and he's so nervous about being caught that he like bumps into Cinderella on his way back into the house, and she spills ashes everywhere, which is apparently what she had been carrying in those buckets. Yep. And the stepmother goes, of course.
So we have to talk about how the stepmother and stepsister are dressed. All of the costumes in this are bonkers. Just delightfully insane.
They really enjoyed color.
They really did, but also really fascinating shapes. So this Cinderella is also not really set in a specific time. The stepmother and stepsisters will all be wearing sort of, there's only one stepsister, so the stepmother and stepsister will all be wearing outfits that look vaguely 1600s-ish with like big sleeves and sort of medium high waists with sort of very square lines. The prince and his terrible friends will all be dressed from the 1300s.
Yes, I remember because we researched that look when we
Yep,
did like a Romeo and Juliet assignment.
we did back in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. So yeah, but the stepmother is wearing a large white felted hat. It's sort of like a top hat with no rim. Like listeners, I want you to imagine a very chubby felt bowling pin which someone has taped gold ribbon across. That's what she's wearing as a hat.
That's pretty close. I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
And
And
it's not even the weirdest hat she wears in this film.
oh, it is the most staid hat that she wears. It's the most staid hat that I think anybody wears in this film. But it's a giant felt white bowling ball pin shaped top hat. And she's wearing these big fur lapels over her dress. And the stepsister is wearing, a hat with a little veil or something.
So what's happening is they're all getting ready because the king is going to be here any minute.
Yes.
And the impression that I get is that the king isn't visiting them so much as he just drives through their village on his way back to the castle. And it's implied that this happens every year.
That makes so much sense. I
Because, okay, I was trying to figure out how far away this village was from the palace, and it seems like not that far.
It seems like not that far because the prince gets there,
Cinderella gets to the palace pretty easily.
yeah, under her own horsepower, which I like. Yeah, it seems like this village is fairly close. So our opening credits, as beautiful as they are, finally end, and we meet our Cinderella. She is very cute. She's very youthful looking. Like she looks much younger than the Cinderellas we normally get. How old do you think this Cinderella is?
I believe that the actress is 18
Hmm.
at the time of the filming, but she looks like maybe 16 at the most.
Yes, 16. I was like, she feels like a definite 16. Um,
She's very baby faced.
she is. She has cute little features, and her face is sort of heart shaped, and she has little wispy bangs and sort of light brown hair that's long, and it's all messy and genuinely like it's messed up. It's sort of half pulled back, and bits are coming out, and she's streaked with ash and dirt.
Yeah, she has actual dirt on her face. It's great. It's
It's great.
amazing.
And so we see her, and she looks out through a window, and my notes go, "Oh no, another dovecot. What will happen this time?" Because when we watched this the first time, I didn't note the dovecot. I didn't think that doves were going to be a theme, and I certainly didn't think that doves were sinister. So
I mean, you have some lingering trauma from doves,
I
so I
do.
understand.
I do. The first time I watched this, I remember the doves being sweet and helpful and charming. They were less charming for me this time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
still like the doves.
It's okay. So she's wearing a long brown sleeve dress with a very high collar gray apron. They do a really great job of making her look not great. It's like still
Yes,
pretty, but
I'm nodding
definitely
aggressively.
aggressive nodding. All right. Uh,
So the stepmother is rushing everyone. Come on, let's go. The stepmother says to her daughter, Dora, watch your shoes, don't catch a cold, and like pets her face and is basically being very attentive. So right away, you know that she dotes and loves her daughter
mhm,
and not Cinderella, obviously.
mhm.
There's a silly bit where the stepsister is allowed to have like a chicken leg from a passing by chef, and she accidentally drops it and a dog runs away with it. So later we see that same dog and Cinderella calls him a silly Billy and goes, "That was delicious, huh?" And she's like very playful with this dog. And then she very sneakily goes backwards through a door and into the barn.
Yeah. This is the most animal loving Cinderella that we have ever seen.
There is not an animal that she doesn't adore, like that she doesn't have a relationship with. that she can't have a conversation with.
Oh, yeah. This Cinderella is convinced that these animals understand her because she talks to them in full sentences. Like, "What do you think I should do next?" "Oh, you're just saying." Like, she has conversations with these animals.
I'm
These animals,
sorry. Do you not have conversations with your dogs?
yes, but they usually are just, "Please stop biting each other. Calm down. I'm aware that the neighbors exist. You have to stop being a jerk." Those are the conversations that I have with my dogs.
Oh, I think maybe you're the weird one on this because I have full conversations with my dog. I
Okay, but
thought the way she talks to animals was very normal.
okay, but your dog has that adorable, like, one ear up, one ear down, head tilty look. I've just got a dum-dum and a jerk face.
You picked them. I don't know what to tell you.
That's fair, that's fair. Uh,
So she goes into the barn, and there's a beautiful white horse in there. We find out his name is Jurassic.
yep, which I had not picked
Jurassic?
up. Yeah, she pronounces it Jurassic, but I in my notes, I'm just like, "She's got a horse named Jurassic. This is Jurassic Park. I love it. Dinosaurs. I want a dinosaur Cinderella now."
That would be incredible. So she brought Jurassic some snacks and she's petting him and kind of just chatting with him and saying, it's been 3 years since daddy gave you to me. And she really wants to ride him again, but she's not allowed to. And then she tells the horse that the king is coming and everyone's so excited. And then she says, I'll come again when I finish my work, and pets him on the nose in that
Mhm.
very sweet way you can do with horses, and then leaves.
And then leaves, but the camera zooms in on the horse very closely, like the horse's face, as though the horse was having a conversation with her as well. It's just
Yes.
the way this is filmed is delightful. So she leaves the barn, and we see that somebody is really high up in a tree keeping a lookout for the king.
Yes.
And that never fails to make me laugh because he's just in a tree. There is a tower that's higher, but he's in the tree. Why? Who knows?
I mean, it's the stepmother. She just decided.
I mean, yes. So the stepmother hears something break from inside and goes, "Oh, it's probably Cinderella," and goes inside to the kitchen. It's not Cinderella. Somebody else has dropped a bowl.
It's this boy that works in the kitchen and he wears a big floppy chef's hat, but I
Mhm.
don't think he's the chef. I think he's much lower on the scale of servants. So I'm going to call him kitchen boy.
I've got him as in my notes as kitchen boy too. So Cinderella comes to help him pick up the shards of the bowl, and stepmother is very mad about it and says,
She grabs a switch off the wall.
she does, and she goes, "Who broke this?" And the servants are like, "Hey, it was already a chipped, like the bowl was already cracked." And the stepmother says, "Answer my question," and looks very threateningly at the kitchen boy, and Cinderella immediately jumps in and goes, "It was me, mama, I did it." Which is really weird, and I'm hoping that the subtitles are just messed up, but they use the word stepmother a lot and step-parents a lot, but they use the word mom specifically here, so
Hmm.
it was a weird choice. I wish I knew what the actual, I wish I could
Yeah,
verify
that
the
would be great to
translation.
compare it.
Yeah. So, she doesn't get whipped in this scene, which is great. I'm happy about
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And we get an exposition dump here from the stepmother. She's very angry that she has been left taking care of Cinderella, and that Cinderella is forbidden from the forest, and the days when her father used to take you to ride and shoot like a boy are done. I am the mistress. You're a maid here. Stay away from your horse. Stay away from the king. Stay away from everything. And then she dumps beans of some kind.
I
Peas? No?
literally wrote pours beans of some kind into the ashes bucket.
Yep. And tells Cinderella to separate them. The kitchen boy offers to help her out. And there's another maid servant in the kitchen who goes, stepmothers will be stepmothers or something, with a sort of, hey, all step parents are awful kind of vibe. And we get a close zoom on Cinderella, and she says, "But Dora wasn't daddy's and he loved her."
Oh,
And I'm like,
that
oh,
line broke my heart
it's so sad.
because
Dora's, oh,
you can
Dora's
really tell
terrible.
how different things must have been when her father was alive.
Yeah, and especially since we actually have a time frame. Normally there's just a very generic, how long has he been dead? A while.
Mhm.
But it's nice we have an actual time period here because it
It has
helps.
to be under 3 years because 3 years ago he gave her that horse.
Yeah, I know. So, like, it makes a lot of sense. I really like having the concrete timeline.
Yes, I found that very helpful too.
Mhm.
So Cinderella goes into this wood paneled room and she pours the whole mess of it on the floor and sits down next to it. And before she can start separating I think there might be chickpeas or something.
I think they're peas. They look like, I guess they're chickpeas. Who who knows?
Anyway, so before she can start separating them from the ashes, there's some doves that are tapping on the window. And it's a lot of doves. It's not like several doves.
Oh, it's a
It's
flock.
like it's like a dozen or more
It's
doves.
a whole flock. It's a healthy, thriving flock of doves.
So she lets them in and she says, "Friends, the peas on the plate and the ashes in the bucket. You're so kind."
And they do make a specific point of showing that the birds are putting the beans in the bowl, but they don't do it for a while, and it just looks like,
They're
yeah,
just pecking at it.
you're just feeding the birds. My girl, no wonder they like you. You keep feeding them.
Well, to be clear, they didn't train these birds to separate peas from ashes.
Oh no.
They just showed us a plate and it had some of the peas on it.
I
And
think
that's how we know that they've done it. So,
so a bird does actually drop a pea, but I think what happens is they just filmed it and then filmed it backwards. So they just filmed a bird eating a pea and then played it backwards for a split second.
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, because it looks weird, but it happens really fast, and there's so much other weird stuff going on that your brain is just like, whatever, fine, peas, sure.
So Cinderella grabs this fur coat. Well, it's more of a poncho. What
Yeah.
it looks like a bathroom mat that has a hole cut out in the middle of it,
Mhm.
and it's very
It's a sheepskin. It's a sheepskin
it
poncho.
looks very grungy.
Yes. Very rustic.
Um, yes, so she grabs it, she puts it on, and she sneaks away. And as she's leaving, there's a cat that starts meowing at her. She's left the room and she's closed the door behind her, and she's standing on the verge of leaving the house when this is happening. And she tells the cat that the cat can't go in right now and asks the cat if she's looking for a snack and pours her some milk. And then she goes, "Do you think you can manage that? Hmm? Oh, you can, huh?" It's very cute the way she talks to animals.
It is.
And she goes to her horse. And also, there's a person there, and we don't get a name for him, so he's just servant man. And
A
he
vet.
has a kind of higher position in the household because
Yep.
he's the one that takes direct orders from the stepmother.
Yep.
Sorry, you were saying.
No, I was gonna say I've got him in my notes as stable man because we meet him in the stables, but yeah, he's a head servant of some kind.
Yes. And he recognizes that it's Cinderella before he turns around to look at her and tells her that he wasn't the one that knew the horse Jurassic knew. And he asks her why she isn't with the others, and she says, "I'm not allowed." And they have this little conversation about it. And he asks her if she's ever seen the prince. And she says she saw him last year. And the servant kind of asks her, like, "Well, did you like him? What did you think?" And she kind of smiles and tucks her face like into the horse and says, "I like Jurassic most of all, right, Jurassic?"
It's so cute. It's so cute.
And then at this point, somebody yells, "They're here." And as the king and the whole entourage starts entering, Cinderella sneaks out the back with the horse because everyone's looking the other way.
Yeah. And she takes the horse to a different stable. This is like her personal shed thing. And
It's like a little hut on stilts, I
it
think,
it's
because
a
she has to
stable.
climb a ladder.
Yeah, it's a stable. It's a little barn. It has a loft, but it's very dilapidated, and it's clearly not the main stable, which is in the village. So it's just this weird little building.
Hmm.
And she climbs up to the loft and she starts calling for someone called Rosie. Rosie's an owl
Who lives there?
who lives there and, quote, looks after her treasures. So she's just chatting with this owl and takes down a jewelry box, and there's a cameo pin in it with a rose and a little silver mirror, which she tries to she looks in and tries to sort of twist her hair back that's fallen out of her hair tie thing, and wipes the ashes off her face. And then she takes the saddle, which was up in the loft, down the ladder, presumably to take the horse and go for a ride. So we cut back to the village, and the fancy procession has arrived, and the king is asking, where are the prince and his two friends? And the man, who you will find out later is the tutor, says, I don't know where they are. I was giving them a lecture on proper manners, and they just disappeared into the forest. The tutor is going to be my favorite character in this. Just
Oh man, that poor man, that
that,
poor man.
that poor guy. Oh God.
So the king sends him off, instructs him to go give them a strict lesson, and then says, "Never mind, I'll take care of it." And then he has to greet this little village.
Hmm.
Everyone bows to him, and then we head back to Cinderella, and she's riding through the snowy field, and there's this like wistful humming music, and it's very like upbeat, and she's smiling, and there's
It's a
all these shots of her looking at treetops against the
mhm.
sky. It's a beautiful riding montage.
It's a riding montage. It's very Narnia. It has a very Narnia feel to it. Everything is snow and snow-covered trees in the sky. It is interrupted, however, by her noticing the prince and his two friends, who are dressed in just the most colorful clothes. It's great.
They're
Um,
all wearing tights,
oh yeah,
and with one leg one color and the other leg a different color usually.
yeah. And the prince has one of those hats on that men wore that had like a little scarf veil thing attached to the top of it, and it came down under their chin and back over their shoulder in a jaunty kind of way, and it just looks
It's a
goofy.
floppy red beret,
Yeah,
basically.
yep. And it looks goofy, and they're all wearing very short tunics, which, because they delightfully did very bright colors and very brightly colored tights, don't look like flesh at all, and I was really happy about it. They chose colorful tights, so that was great. Full points.
Yes. We didn't have to deal with that ever again
Yep.
in this movie.
Nope. So they're out hunting, and they see a deer, and Cinderella has gotten off of her horse to sort of sneak around in the trees and watch them. And right as they're about to shoot this deer, she takes a snowball and throws it and hits the prince square in the head. And he misses his shot, and the deer runs off, and his friends make fun of him about, like, oh, what happened to your aim, as though they can't see that he was just hit in the face with a snowball.
Is that not what you would do if I missed a shot?
Oh no, that's absolutely what I would do if you missed it.
Regardless of the reason.
A whole
I was literally hit by a snowball out of nowhere, Liv.
an avalanche could fall on your head. I'd be like, what happened to your aim, Talon?
So they spot her across a clearing
Mhm.
and kind of run after her. And at this point, she giggles and then she starts running through the woods. We get a chase scene where they try to follow her around a tree and like she hides behind a fallen log. And then at the end, she goes under an overhang and is just kind of covered by some roots. And
Mhm.
the prince and his friends stand on top of the overhang and then jump off of it somewhat unsuccessfully. They end up like rolling in the snow, which
Mhm.
they do a lot of.
I do
And they
a lot.
realize that there's no trail anymore. Then they find her again and start running and finally decide to split up in order to corner her, which is a
The
very
part
smart idea.
It is also the part where the scene stops being fun, because up until now I've been having a good time with, this is fresh snowfall. You could just follow the very obvious footprints. How did you lose her? She went around a tree, which means her footprints run around a tree. Come on, guys. We're watching you leave massive, just snowy upheaval prints. But at this point, yeah, they split up and manage to corner her like they're hunting her, and it stops being a fun scene at this point.
I think it's still a fun scene because she's got her back against the tree and she's like trying to catch her breath, but she's still laughing.
Oh, see, I did not read that as laughing. I read that as like suddenly scared.
Oh no, I didn't read that as scared at
Oh,
all. I read that
okay.
as laughing.
Okay, that's slightly better, but I'm still not a big fan of it.
Yeah, they're okay. I watched this a lot as a kid, and so
Hmm.
to me, all of it is like through rose-colored glasses completely. So I will
Absolutely.
completely admit that anything that has like a potentially like negative overtone or like an implication just completely went over my head. Like I
And
totally missed it.
that's completely fair. Anyways, so they have cornered her and they laugh at her and they call her a child and a kid and a nestling, and she's really mad about that.
They call her basically a little pipsqueak,
Yeah. And so the prince reaches out his hand to sort of touch her face, and she smacks his hand away and pulls his hat down over his face,
which is incredible.
which is amazing. Except that they respond with like, "Oh, I guess she needs a spanking, or maybe we just throw her in the thorns," which I hated. But then she responds, "When hell freezes over, asshole," and runs away and steals his horse. So this scene for me is just this roller coaster of I love it, I hate it, I love it, I hate it, I love it. So she steals his horse, the prince's horse, and now they're genuinely worried because everybody is afraid of this horse, all the stable boys are afraid of it, and she's very small, and they're worried that she's going to hurt herself. But she doesn't. She rides the stolen horse back to her horse, gets on her horse, and then sends the stolen horse back to the prince. And at
And
this
when we
point,
say sends,
oh,
she just says, go back to your master
it's
now.
it's
And the
great.
horse walks off, and we just have to hope that he finds the prince.
He does. We find out immediately that he makes his way back to the prince, but it's great. The prince at this point is actually impressed that she's stayed one step ahead of them. His two friends are still pretty salty about the whole thing, but the prince at this point is like, "Oh wow, that was a pretty impressive child." We do get the friends' names like right in the beginning.
Do we?
We do just for a second, but like I didn't write them down. They went too fast for me to write them down, and we never hear them again.
The friends are completely interchangeable. I have them as friend one and friend two, but it doesn't matter which one said which line because they're always together.
Yeah, they are the Benvolio and Mercutio of this
Yes.
movie.
We should describe the prince.
Ah, yeah.
So I think the prince is handsome. He's got like a little short bob of black hair,
Mhm.
which is working on him.
Is it talent? Is it
it's
working on him?
it's okay. It's as good as it can possibly look on anyone. Like I promised everyone would look worse in that hairstyle.
Okay, I will accept that.
And he has a really nice smile.
He has a nice smile, he has strong features, sort of a nice square chin and a strong nose. Yeah, the page boy haircut just kills it for me. I can't get over it, and he's wearing clothes that are not good on him, and I don't love the way his character is portrayed. His character
Okay.
is very petulant. If you gave that boy a better haircut, like any other haircut, literally anything at all, um, and put him in a nice pair of jeans and a jacket, yeah, he would be really good looking. As it is, I can't get into the prince.
Anyway, the two
Anyways,
friends have lighter hair, also in little bobs. One of them looks younger than the other, or like has a rounder face, and they mostly wear shades of green.
excuse me, one of them is wearing lavender right now, just bright
Is
purple.
he?
Bright purple. And the other one's wearing blue, so
Okay, they were wearing green in the next scene, and that's when they started paying attention to what they were
that's
wearing.
they are
My
indeed
bad.
wearing green in the next scene, it's fine. So at this point, their tutor has caught up with them somehow, and the tutor is a older, plump, stocky, very stodgy fellow, and the tutor finds them and tries to get them to to come back to their history lessons or something, and the boys all get on their horses and race back into the forest.
Then we're back at the village, and the stepmother is trying to chat up the king and queen, and she's trying to find out, like, oh, the prince didn't come with you this time. And the king has to cover for his ne'er do well son and say, oh, he did, just nature studies have detained him on the way. Um, and then the stepmother goes on this campaign of getting
Yes.
invited to the ball. And it's incredible. So, how she achieves this is she says, "Oh, all year we've been looking forward to your visit. And, I even had a dream that you would come here. And in my dream, you looked at my daughter and you looked at me and you invited us to the ball." And the king and queen kind of exchange a glance. And she's like, "Yes, yes, in my dream, you looked right at me and you said we would be delighted to see you there." And the king kind of waits a beat and goes, "We shall be pleased to see you there. Thank you for the refreshments."
Yeah, he sort of rolls his eyes and sighs very faintly and looks at the queen in this sort of, "Oh, peasants, okay," kind of way. And it's charming. I really like the relationship between the king and the queen in this movie.
You definitely get the sense that they're on the same team,
Oh yeah, no, I like it. They're on the same team. They keep each other stable. I like it. And you
but
get
they
a
also poke at each other, and it's very cute.
yeah, very believable couple. I like them a lot. We have to talk about what the king is wearing just for a second, because he's wearing the biggest dark blue cloth hat that you've ever seen. It's like a weather balloon. Like he's wearing a weather balloon on his head. And
Okay, but now you have to talk about what the queen is wearing.
okay, the queen is wearing a gigantic fur triangle behind her neck. Just a big triangle made out of fur and a
She's
very
just surrounded by fur.
conical white dress. It's it's great. The costumes in this are just so much fun. They're not correct in any way, shape, or form, or set in any single century even. But my god, they're fun.
I really like seeing like winter versions of outfits because we never get a Cinderella set in the winter.
Yeah, agreed. The royal entourage heads home and the prince and his friends ride up out of the forest and join them just as they're leaving. And we see the king and the queen in their carriage really sort of for the first time for an extended shot. Their carriage is full of dogs.
Yes.
They've got what initially looks like a Pekingese. It's not. It just looks like that because it's shot from far away. But they've got basically two Afghan hounds in their carriage, which are large dogs with long hair, and a jester who's just sitting on the floor with the dogs, and he's got a tricorn hat with bells that's white and blue and doesn't say anything. Nothing happens.
He has no lines in this entire movie, but he appears often.
He does.
I will
So
also say that if you had to go on a carriage or sled or whatever it is ride through a winter,
in Czechoslovakia, yeah, I
yeah,
would bring
I
dogs.
would bring dogs to
Yeah,
cuddle with
absolutely.
under the big fur blanket. It's brilliant.
Absolutely. No, I love it. It just caught me off guard because normally the dogs would have like a purpose in the movie, but they don't at all.
So then the king chides the prince for carrying on like a little boy and warns him that he'll behave when he's married. And the prince starts to argue with him, and the queen cautions them to discuss this at home, where there are no witnesses.
I love the queen. She is great.
So then the prince kind of rides off a little bit, and the king turns to his two friends and is like, "What have you been doing? Like, you were supposed to devote yourself to the study of diplomacy and etiquette." And they're like, "Oh, yes, we've been very devoted. It's been very difficult." And they're just like bullshitting him a lot. And he's like, "Where is your tutor?" And they're both like, "Oh, he must have wandered off again, that careless man." The prince is now ridden to the other side of the carriage so he can be next to his mom instead of next to his dad. But the mom and dad, like the king and queen, are like a foot apart from each other. So he leans down and whispers, "Are those just threats? Or does he mean it about the marriage?" And the queen goes, "No, yeah, he means it." And the music changes to this like dun 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 music. And we zoom in on the prince's face, and he's like not thrilled about it. And then we see the castle in the distance. So at least this awkward ride is not going to be much longer.
So we cut back to the village, where the stepmother is in a tizzy because they're now going to this ball, and she's telling the head servant guy to go and buy lots of fancy fabric, velvets and silks and ribbons and trim and silver buckles. And she gives him this massive list in no order and just says, make sure you don't forget any of it. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And he rides out on a sleigh.
As he rides out, he sees Cinderella, and she's in the forest in the winter, sitting on a plank over a stream doing laundry with her hands in the water.
Singing an amazing La 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 song.
Yes.
This is the least melodic song I think we've ever gotten.
she, she has many skills and talents. I don't know that singing is necessarily one of them.
Like, her voice is pretty, but the song is la 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 la. Like, it's amazing. It's
There's not
literally
much of
two
a
notes.
melody to it.
There's no melody at all. So my notes immediately panic about the frostbite that she's getting on her hands.
Yeah.
And I'm like, does this movie not know about frostbite? But no, it does, because the main servant guy rolls up and is like, you are going to freeze.
And he's like, did the mistress tell you to do this? And Cinderella goes, who else? And then he asks, what shall he get her in town? And she's like, oh yeah, how about a tiara and some pearls and a veil? I can just see them persuading me to go to the ball with them. And the servant guy kind of is sad, and he goes, if I could bring you whatever you wished, honestly, I would. And she smiles at him and says, well, then bring me the first thing that hits you in the nose. And he agrees and rides off, and she goes back to doing the laundry and singing her La 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 song.
Yep. And now we cut to the palace where we see the prince. You guys, he's wearing his shiny gold fedora.
But like a little one.
Like a miniature gold fedora, like a party size gold fedora with a big feather in it and a big shiny sparkly gold collar and just extremely extremely white tights.
Yep. It's a
And
strong look.
it's a powerful look, man, and he stays with it for a while. So the king and queen are going over the invite list for the ball, and the prince is not pleased about this list. He compares it again to a manhunt. And the king does not want to have this argument in front of people, so he dismisses all the servants. And the prince tries to convince the king to release him from this audience and is like, "No, I'm going to go study." And he's just making stuff up.
He's laying it on real thick.
Hmm.
He's like, yes, we're going to study the history of the kingdom and of our glorious line and the traditions that we do and in the
That's great.
diplomacy.
Yeah, it's great. And the king walks over to the window and looks out of it, and his two friends are below with crossbows and arrows and stuff. They are clearly going hunting.
They're
And
also like pushing each other
oh
and
yeah,
just clearly like up to no good.
yeah, just horsing around. And the king asks the prince, are you making fun of me? And the prince is like, I wouldn't dare. And we cut to downstairs where the tutor has shown up and grabs the bows away from their friends and shoves books into their hands. And we cut back to the tower, and the king is basically tells the queen to go look. And the queen looks over and sees the friends holding books and talking to the tutor. And she's like, I'm confused. And so the king also looks out and sees the boys holding the books and just goes, okay, fine, but also practice dancing.
And then the prince says, in at the same time as the king, I've danced through 3 pairs of slippers in one night. And walks out of the room while he does that. He did that earlier also when the king was telling him, when I was your age, I had upon my shoulders, and the prince finishes, the full power of the kingdom. Yes, I know, responsibility. Okay.
So then the king and queen have an incredibly cute scene. Because now it's just them in the tower. And the queen is like, interesting. When did you dance through all these shoes? And he goes, it was before I met you. And she goes, that's fascinating, because I seem to remember you telling me that you had never danced before when you were stepping on my feet at the ball where we met.
And he goes, "That's not something to brag about to our son." And she's like, "He's very like you." And the king's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Oh, yes, in all the important ways."
And she's got her hair in these little, like, poofy net things, and the king is just sort of holding her hands, like, both hands, and smiling at her really sincerely, and it's really sweet. We don't we don't see a ton of lovely king-queen relationships. I really
Mhm.
like theirs. Theirs is it's not the best we've ever seen, but man, it's sweet. I like it a lot.
It was adorable. So next we have the prince and his two friends, and they're back in the snow in the woods, and one of them was holding out like a gnarled root and pretending to play the flute, and the
Yep.
other one is pretending to dance with the prince, and they're just making a mockery of the whole thing, and they're being very silly, and they keep falling in the snow and rolling around, and they're like, "Ah, yes, let us now do conversation." And then they do a French accent, it says in the
It
subtitles.
says in the subtitles.
So supposedly they're speaking Czech with a French accent. And one of the friends holds out his hand and is like looking away from the prince. And instead of kissing his hand, the prince bites him on the thumb really theatrically.
Yep.
And they do this little thing where the prince is like pretending to chat him up, but is like, "Oh, you're so beautiful, you're so fascinating, but I have to tell you, I have a different love. It is the hunt. I cannot marry you." And as he's saying this, the friend is like swooning incrementally until he falls backwards into the snow,
They just have the
taking the
most
prince with him.
beautiful parody flirt ever, and they wind up again, yeah, rolling around in the snow, snowball fight ensues.
Their other friend yells, "There won't be rain from that cloud." And the prince goes, or like that kid said, "When hell freezes over."
Yep.
And in the distance, we see the tutor running after them, yelling plaintively, "Gentlemen, gentlemen." And they see him and they get on their horses and run off. And he's like, "What about your studies?"
The tutor, by the way, at this point is wearing sort of all browns and grays, but he has this bright red, like, old-timey church priesty cardinal hat thing. It's just this bright red, amazing thing. And he's just leaning sadly against a tree. I
Trying to
love
catch his breath because
I
he's
love
been running and they've been riding.
I love it. So, the prince and his friends go hunting, and they see the head servant guy from Cinderella's village drive by, and he is asleep at the reins.
Mhm.
And as a joke, the prince decides to shoot something down so that it falls on his head. It is a nest. And so the nest falls down on the servant guy's head and wakes him up, and
He
he
reaches into it.
he reaches into it and pulls out this little sprig that has 3 nuts on it. They look like acorns. They're later called hazelnuts. I don't know. And he looks at them and goes, "Oh, dear girl, I almost forgot about you." And then throws the nest away and tucks the nuts into his pouch, which A, that's weird. And B, the nuts didn't touch his nose. The nest hit him in the face. Surely he should bring the nest home,
I think it's a phrase, like whatever falls into your lap would be like a phrase
I guess.
that you could say. I don't think she literally meant hits you in the nose, but it did happen to hit him in the nose.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
So we're back inside the main house, and the stepmother and stepsister are trying on fabric for their dresses. They don't have the dresses yet, but they're kind of draping fabric and picking out patterns.
Like blankies. They're just draping yards and yards of very bizarrely patterned shiny fabric around them like blankies. It's amazing.
Yes. Yes. And walking around the room. Meanwhile, Cinderella is picking up scrap and is like cleaning the fireplace.
Mhm.
The servant guy gives her the branch with the 3 nuts, and he says, "It woke me up by falling in my lap right as I was dreaming that I was driving to your wedding." And the stepmother notices and demands to know what he just gave her. And Cinderella initially hid it behind her back, but she takes it out and she holds it out to the stepmother, who goes, "Oh, it's not it's not anything." And goes, "Oh, such a nice present, maybe for a squirrel." and gives it back to Cinderella.
Mhm.
They then decide that they need to go to town because they can't send a servant out for jewelry, and obviously they need new jewelry for the ball.
Obviously.
They tell the servant guy to prepare the carriage, and then the stepsister goes, "Would you like to come with us, Cinderella? You'd only scare people off." And Cinderella keeps sweeping the fireplace as this is happening, and the stepmother barks at her, "I said sweep it properly." So she gets a bigger broom and starts sweeping it really, really hard. And all this
So
dust
great.
flies up into the stepmother and stepsister's faces, and they start coughing and covering their faces and mouth and nose.
It's the best. It's the greatest. I had forgotten about this scene altogether. I want more malicious compliance from my Cinderella. I want an Amelia Bedelia Cinderella.
I mean, it's what I wanted from Ella Enchanted.
Yes, I wanted a malicious compliance. That would have been amazing.
I think it's risky to do malicious compliance when you're Cinderella.
It is, but I would like to watch it.
Yes, I mean, me
I'm
too.
Anyways, so then we cut to an outdoor scene, and her horse, Jurasek, and Silly Billy the dog are playing tag. We just watched this for a little bit. They're
It's
just playing
very
in the snow.
cute.
It's really
Very
cute.
cute.
It is.
Silly Billy the dog is like a little white and brown dog with like spots all over him. And he's such a cute dog, and he's playing with this big horse and kind of jumping up and down. It's just, I like the animal friends interlude.
It is cute, and it's nice that they interact with each other. I like that a lot. Cinderella goes to her little special shed farm thing to go talk to her owl friend and says, "Oh, you're lucky you could fly anywhere. I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck within these walls." And the owl hoots, and we get sort of tinkly music. And
No, you
no?
missed the most important line.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cinderella goes, "I'd like to see where he goes, but I can't looking like this."
Oh, right. Okay.
So she specifically is interested in the prince.
Okay. I missed that. Sorry. So then we get tinkly music, and the owl hoots, and one of the nuts falls. And it cracks when it hits the floor. And Cinderella opens it, and there's a little piece of fabric coming out of it. And she tugs it a little bit, and a little more comes out. And this is a really creative use of film because there's not a special effect in this scene.
They
They
just
just,
stuffed a little piece of fabric inside a nut.
inside a nut, she pulls a little bit of it out. They cut to her face looking surprised. And then she's pulling a whole hat, a Robin Hood hat, from off screen. And then she drops the nut, which has fallen into two empty halves. So it's, as a viewer, it is very, you pulled that out of the thing, but there's literally no special effects. It's just creative filming, and I really liked it. We do get some
Mhm.
dumb special effects later, but this is
Yes, we
just
do.
really well done. So what the hazelnut has given her is a Robin Hood outfit.
With little leaf patterns on one leg.
Oh, it's cute. It's
It's very cute.
it's a very cute Robin Hood pattern um outfit. I like it. She goes down the ladder and she gets on her horse, and she's all in this boy's outfit now, and her hair is, which is quite long, is now somehow up in a bob. Talon thinks it was just tucked up, but it's curling under like a bob. So I was really confused about her hair for longer than I should have been.
I
I
mean,
spent
I think they put a wig on her. I don't think that's her actual hair. I think while filming this, that's a wig. But I think in universe, she just tucked her hair into the hat and it looks like a page boy haircut, kind of.
Okay, I'll buy it. I can compromise with that. It's fine.
The animals react to her looking different and she reassures them that it's still her, which I thought was really cute.
Because it's very obvious to us that it's still her. She is not in any way disguised, but um
Right.
it's nice that they're establishing that in universe she looks very different. So the next scene is a fox hunt. Talon and I both hate this scene,
Yeah.
so I don't want to talk about it.
We have to tell you right away the fox dies.
The fox dies. There's a bunch of beagles and bloodhounds bang. We get some interesting, sort of horrific POV shots of the dogs running and the fox, and then the prince shoots the fox and it's dead. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Okay,
Um,
that scene is over.
that scene's over. There's
We've decided. Anyway, so now the head hunter guy tells the prince, now you have to get a bird of prey, and your highness will become crowned king of the hunt.
Yeah, so that's evidently what this outing is.
Yes. And he holds up this beautiful giant ring and he
Massive.
says, it's huge. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a brooch on a ring.
Yes.
And the king awards this precious ring to the huntsman who first shoots down a bird of prey. Huntsmen go forward. And first it's just the prince and his two friends go forward. And I full on thought that they organized this entire competition just for the three of them because that's the level of board they're at. But no, there's a bunch of actual huntsmen who also go forward.
Yep.
So they spot like a bird, like I guess a hawk or something.
It's a hawk, yeah.
Excellent. And the friends like basically call dibs on it and they each take a turn and miss. And then it's the prince's turn and he doesn't even try because he says that it's already up too high and he just kind of puts down his crossbow. Cinderella takes aim from behind them in the trees and just kind of angles her crossbow almost straight up.
Straight up. It's great.
And then shoots, and the bird falls out of the sky. The bird also dies, I'm sorry.
But we're not emotionally attached to the bird because we didn't watch it be hunted.
Yes.
And so
and it's anyway.
it's a bird.
So the prince holds up the arrow, asking whose it is, and it's immediately shot out of his hand by another arrow that hits the arrow he's holding straight in the middle, making a T.
So
And
it's great.
It's very Robin Hood. It's a very Robin Hood move.
This might be the Robin Hood Cinderella.
I think we missed the obvious thing. It's the Dr. Dolittle Cinderella.
Ah.
I feel like really dumb for missing that.
Yep.
It's too late now.
It's too late now, but whatever.
So Cinderella walks out of the woods and she says, "Forgive me." And the prince goes, "Who are you?" And she just says, "I thought you didn't want to take the shot anymore." And he takes her crossbow out of his hands and out of her hands and inspects it and goes, "Well, this is just a regular crossbow." And somebody asks, "Do we continue with the hunt?" And the prince says, "No, the best marksman has shown us his skill already." And he takes the ring and he goes to put it on Cinderella's gloved hand and she kind of pulls her hand away. And he like takes it and puts the ring on. And it's so romantic.
But also really weird because the way that she walks out of the trees, I have struts forward manfully, like she swaggers forward,
Yes,
like
sure.
Mulan, like Mulan entering the war camp for the first time. It's amazing. And
they're also all clearly buying the look.
Oh yeah,
and are treating her like she's a fellow huntsman, even though she just looks like a baby in a hunting outfit.
And her voice is very high. She has a very high-pitched voice. It's sweet and clear and beautiful and charming, but she's not an alto. She doesn't have a low voice. So she's talking like this, and it's very obvious that she's not a boy.
The prince also spends a lot of time looking at this new huntsman. Just like long shots of the prince's face as he's trying to figure this out. And just like cogs are turning, but very slowly in his head. And I think he's developing a crush.
I think he is. This movie has a lot of undertones. So at this point, the prince goes, maybe you have this line better than me, but the prince goes, "Or you could show us some more," but he says it in such a sultry way.
He says, can you show us something more? And I read it as him being salty that she shot the bird out of the sky.
Oh, it's definitely him being salty that she shot the bird out of the sky, but the way that this actor chooses to deliver the line is very bedroom style. So and she also responds to that with, "I'm sorry you're angry."
And he doesn't respond to that at all and just points to a tree pretty far away, and it's a very high tree. And he says, "Can you see those cones at the tip? Would you dare?"
And she goes, "Even a little girl can do that." And she goes to take the shot, and the prince and his two friends hover around her. Like, they're resting their chins on her shoulder. They are plastered up against her as she takes this shot, and
Well, because she's aiming and they're all trying to see how she's aiming.
it's so great, but they're just smushed all together. It's so funny.
It's
Um,
a really good scene.
it is. So she shoots the cone, it falls down, one of the friends goes to get it, and in the time that they're looking at this pine cone, she has gotten on her horse and ridden away.
The prince yells, "Bring the horses," and goes to search for this hunter and is just going through the woods yelling, "Hey." And he gets hit in the face with snow again because Cinderella is up in a tree and he goes, "Did you see a hunter come through here?" And she goes, "No, only a featherless nestling." And he goes, "Well, come down." And she goes, "Come up." And he's like, "I'm telling you to come down." And she goes, "I'm telling you to come up."
It's amazing.
And he goes, "We've met before." And she says, "You'd have to remind me." And he says, "Right here in this woods, you little lizard."
It's amazing. And then he says, "You won't get away this time," in, again, sort of a flirty way, and approaches the tree like he's gonna actually climb it.
Which
But
she's invited him to do. So like I don't know what her goal is.
I don't know either. This is a "I'm chasing you" flirty scene that totally works for me.
Well, because it's one-on-one
Yes.
and she's not
Also
being ganged up on.
also because she's literally invited him to come up the tree. But
Yes.
his friends show up and he's like, "I'm talking to the girl. Can't you see her?" And suddenly they can't find her even though she's still there. She's just moved around the tree to a slightly different part of tree.
Well, my favorite part is that the friends are like, "Did you see the hunter?" And he's like, "No, I'm looking for someone else now," basically. He's been completely derailed. They all thought they were looking for the hunter. He's not even doing that anymore. He's moved on.
Keep up, guys. Keep up. So we cut back to the village, and there are a lot of fittings happening for dresses. These dresses span 500 years, guys. It's amazing. But they're
And the
pinning.
patterns span more.
Oh, it's the best. So Cinderella's bringing buttons and silver thread and jewels, and they're getting ready to be basically done. And Dora, the stepsister, asks Cinderella how she looks, and Cinderella stops and she goes, in a really sincere tone of voice, "You look beautiful." And the stepsister sort of pauses, and the stepsister, by the way, which we've completely forgotten to describe her,
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, she's very plump. She's kind of pretty. She has delicate features and dark hair and kind of a sweet smile. She's really mean.
Yeah, if this was a different movie, she could have been the star of it.
Oh yeah, no, it's visually unclear that she's supposed to be the evil stepsister. But in this moment, she looks sweet for a second, and then Dora goes, "Would you like to come with us?" And at this point, we see the stepmother's hat, and I don't have any lines for the rest of this scene
I
because
have
the
the
rest of
next line.
please tell me you have the lines because
I have the next line. Please describe the hat.
oh god, guys, it's an umbrella. It's an umbrella. It's a white umbrella, like a fancy Lolita umbrella with the curvy tips between the tines and the sort of onion shape on the top, but it's not round like an umbrella because that would be silly, guys. It's sort of elongated, like it's been smushed, and it's also not just sitting on her head; it's above her head. So she's just got a smushed white Lolita umbrella on top of her head, and will continue to be wearing it for the next like 7 scenes. So I've got I've got a solid essay on white umbrella hat and an occasional word about like the movie.
That's okay. I got this.
It
It was a very distracting hat.
was so distracting.
So Cinderella says, "I know you wouldn't take me inside, but could I have a peek through the windows?" And the stepmother goes, "Well, who would do the cleaning here?" And Cinderella says, "I would have it all done by morning." And the stepmother says, "If you don't have enough work here, then you can sort this out." And she pours lentils and I guess acorns on the floor and just mixes them up. And then Dora comes up to her and takes her foot and kind of spins it, mixes it all around, and says, "I'll tell you tomorrow how many times I danced with the prince. Hold my veil." And Cinderella holds onto her veil but doesn't move when Dora walks forward, so she gets yanked back. And then Cinderella says very
It's dirty.
sweetly, "I think you better hold it yourself."
I might get it dirty.
And then the kitchen boy comes up to her and says, "Don't be sad, we can dance after supper." And she knocks this hat over his face the same exact way that she did to the prince before. So I think that they're friends. Because that seems to be a thing that she does often.
Yeah. The stepmother is also, by the way, wearing a massive fur cloak that's got like triple levels, like an English greatcoat, but just fur. And it's the most bizarre garment, other than the umbrella and everything else that gets worn. So it's
I
on
don't
par
know,
with
some
everything
of the
else, but
sleeves get pretty intense.
some of the sleeves do get pretty intense, y'all. Okay.
So the head servant guy goes, "You're sad about that, right?" And Cinderella kind of shrugs and walks away. And he says to himself, "But I can't help you," which is very sad. Cinderella goes to get a pot and a plate, and she sits down and says, "It'll take a week to pick these apart." And then she starts working. Like, you see her start putting them into different pails. But there's doves knocking at the window, and they've come to help her again. And she tells them, put the corn into the basket and the lentils into the bowl, and thanks them and says, "What would I have done without you?" And then she goes to visit Rosie the owl. And she gets her jewel box out, and as she's like holding it, she's reminiscing and saying, "Daddy always laughed that I'd ride Jurassic to my first ball like a hussar," which is a type of soldier. And then she says, "My mom promised me a beautiful dress as pink as the red sky and as blue as something else that I missed." And she says, "But now I only have Jurassic." And she thinks about it a little bit and goes, "Well, no, I have some other things. I have 3, well, no, 2 now nuts." And she looks at the owl and she goes, "Rosie, do you think?" And she closes her eyes and throws one of the nuts over her shoulder. And we get a very silly effect where in place of the nut, there's like a twinkle sound, and we see a folded up dress. And it's a beautiful pink and blue dress. She holds it up to her chest, and she holds the skirt, and she dances with it until Jurassic neighs at her. And she asks him, "How did you get here? And who saddled you?" And there's this magical twinkly music, and she looks at Rosie, and the camera lingers on the owl, Rosie. So, did Rosie do it?
Yeah, we're going to have some questions about where exactly the magic comes from in this. Because I have questions.
Yeah.
So we cut to the ball where we're having an introduction of eligible ladies. There's just an endless line of eligible womenfolk, mostly older women escorting their 2 or 3 or 4 daughters. There's almost no men here. The king is grumpy. He's telling the prince to smile and to not look so sour. To which the prince responds, "Well, I'd like to know which one you would be smiling at if you had to marry one." At which point the queen reminds them not to quarrel in public. And the king basically says, "I didn't make a fuss like this when I got married." To which the prince goes, "Okay, but you married mom."
He says, "You got to marry mom."
You got to marry mom. It's the cutest. It has some weird implications, but it's really cute. So my notes just say the band starts up. Nope. Because we get told that the music is going to start, and the band plays a couple of notes and then stops.
Because the prince was supposed to start dancing and he hadn't, so they're waiting on him. Because
that's not how music works.
No. Maybe it does when you're a prince.
Maybe it does.
So,
okay.
He says earlier, "I don't care who I dance with. You point to one and I'll dance with her." But they're making him choose.
So he says, "I'll choose blindly." and just starts walking through the room to see who he bumps into, I guess.
He's kind
And
of squinting, and we see a very blurry shot of all the girls lined up.
yeah,
So he can kind of see, he just can't see faces.
okay. So he opens his eyes and he is standing in front of Dora. And she smiles sweetly at him and he sort of offers a hand. But a large girl in aggressive red sleeves steps forward and just takes his hand again, very aggressively.
See,
And
I thought it was the other way around. I thought he stopped in front of the lady in the red and he gave her her hand, and Dora tried to intercept it because later her mom tells her that she was too slow.
oh, I think that her mom was telling her that she was too slow because she was too slow to take the prince's hand when he offered it to her.
Oh, interesting. I completely misread
Because
that.
because I think that the prince looks at the large aggressive girl in angry red and does an internal nope and looks at the next one, which is Dora, and goes to offer her, to dance. And
I
Red Chick is
thought
like, nope, you looked at my eyeballs, mine now.
I thought that he literally stopped in front of the girl in the red dress because she was wearing the brightest color there. And he just stopped in front of her because that's the only thing he could see through squinty eyes.
That's quite possible, but he definitely does a look, oh God, no thank you. Because the girl in the red dress, it's a black dress with a red bodice. She is tall, she's large, she has dark hair, she's very assertive. The sleeves have like 17 different poofs, each of them the size of an infant. They're just huge.
It's like somebody took the world's poofiest sleeves and then put rubber bands going down the arm to
Yep.
capture the poofs. And it just looks really red and ruffly.
Yeah, it's a violent dress somehow. I didn't know poofs could be violent, but this woman achieves it.
So the music continues and they start to dance, and now we see other girls being asked to dance by other guys, and this is where the stepmother chastises Dora for being too slow, and a guy comes up to her and asks the mom permission to ask Dora to dance. She gives it, and Dora kind of miserably goes to dance with him. The plump lady in the red dress is smiling, and the prince just looks very bleak.
Mhm.
At one point, she picks him up, and the king leans over to the queen and goes, "To think, I knew nothing of the prince's tastes, it seems." And the queen
It's
giggles.
oh yeah, they're roasting him. I love it. It's phenomenal. This is a weird dance, by the way. This is no type of dance that has ever existed. This is just holding hands with your partner and walking sideways and then not walking sideways and then walking sideways again.
It
It
looks like court dancing to me, a person who doesn't understand anything about dancing. It looks like the kind of very formal dancing where you touch hands with your partner and that's about all you do.
it does look like court dancing. They got it right in that it looks like court dancing. But the couples are just sort of strewn all around the room. They're not in sets, they're not lined up, they're not doing anything other than just walking sideways and then not sideways like crabs. It's weird.
Yeah, they
I,
didn't do a great job, it sounds like.
no, they didn't do a great job. I've seen worse, but they didn't do a great job. Oh, so now we get the little bird song.
Yes.
So we cut outside to the nighttime where Cinderella is riding through the snow, and we get this melodic ballady song, which is about a little bird who doesn't know what traps are, and Birch Tree embraces the bird so that the singer can leave. Is that what your subtitle said? You're giving me
Um,
a weird look.
I have never thought about what the words said because I only ever watched this dubbed and they never dubbed the song. So when I hear it in my head, I hear it in Czech. And I literally didn't read the subtitles during that part because I was
Oh,
like, this song does not have a translation.
okay, good. I feel better because the look
No,
you were giving me was making me really worried.
I was just like, wow, is that what it's been about these last 30 years?
Yes. So she's wearing this pink cloak with this long, long trailing hood, and this it has it buttons very tightly around the throat, like 3 buttons very tightly around the throat, which is weird. That's not how
It's a very
cloaks.
fitted hood. I wanted one desperately when I was a child.
You gotta know, from the time I first met Talon to now, the primary palette has been blacks and grays. And this dress is aggressively pink and blue, just baby pink, baby blue, aggressive. So,
I don't know what it is. It's like a confection. It's pink. It's frothy. The long hood is so elegant. It just looks so cool. I just wanted it.
so Cinderella walks up to the window and breathes on the glass and wipes a little bit clean and just looks through the window at the ball like a creeper.
She's definitely not invited to the ball.
Oh, no, not at all. We see the stepsister is now dancing with the prince, and the belligerent girl in the red dress snorts at her aggressively. And the stepmother is crying in joy under her giant white umbrella hat, which she's still wearing. So Cinderella's watching the prince and the stepsister dance together, looking happy, and she is sad about this. And then we get some amazing first lines, which I don't have them all. Do you have
I don't
these?
have them all.
Okay. So the prince is talking to the stepsister and he goes, "Did you come far?" And she goes, basically, "Nothing is too far from my desire to dance with you." And it just continues in that vein. And basically, she's being very forward. Everything he says or tries to ask her as an innocuous question, she's like, "Oh, I would be delighted to take you into my debt." I like just weird, the
She says,
weirdest possible answers.
she says, I would dance with you until the end of the world. And he says, even after I've trod on your feet, such courage. And she goes, well, you can trot on me again, basically.
It's
It's a lot. She's a lot. And
it's a
he
lot.
flees at this point,
He does.
and the lady in red gets swung past Dora and goes, ha ha.
It's I wanna know what's happening with the lady in red. I wanna know what fairy tale she's in and what character she plays in it, because she's definitely the main character in her own story.
She seems like she's having an amazing time, and I want only the best for her.
Likewise, but I also wanna know what her story is. Like, what fairy tale is she in? Who is she? I wanna know. Alright.
So Cinderella comes back to Jurassic the horse, who neighs at her, and she goes, you think I should go on? And he literally nods at her.
And wait. So he whinnies. The subtitles at this point say, "Yup, yup, winky face emoji." And it's the only time that they put in subtitles for an animal's response to her responses in scare quotes. Yup,
these
yup,
are
winky face.
these are not the official subtitles. These were fan made.
But oh my god, they're so great. And so Cinderella then does a will I, won't I, counting the railings, the balusters on the fancy staircase. And she will, because you can make that thing end however you want. It's great.
That's kind of the point of the thing.
Yeah. So she walks past a long row of guards who all turn to look at her once she's passed, and her hair is all up in these twisty curls, and she's got one very long twisted curl down the center of her back, very 1780s. And servants trip and fall over themselves because they're watching her,
Like
and
literally.
literally they trip. And then we see the inside of the ballroom, and there is a wrought iron screen door with Celtic knot designs on it, which
Why not?
opens, and Cinderella enters. And she's got sort of a jeweled tiara type headdress thing and ribbons in her hair. And she has a design on the back of her dress. It's like a phoenix or a
Yeah,
bird
I
of
thought
some
that
kind.
was really cool.
Me too. I wished it had meant something or like been relevant in any way.
Or it had been
Um,
like an owl or one of the
right.
animals we saw her interact with.
That would have been really nice, but instead we get a phoenix, and it's a little bit weird. The prince has not noticed this, and he goes back to the dais with the thrones very grumpily and basically is saying, "I'm out of breath. I won't dance anymore."
The
And
king teases him by saying, "I'll have them play something faster."
Cinderella's still entering the room, and she takes a veil and sort of tucks it into part of her hair and then the other part of her hair, so it's covering her entire face, including her eyes. And the musicians stop playing because they see her, or because the prince has
No,
stopped dancing.
it's because the prince announces that he'd rather cut trees, and his father tells him, "As you wish, you may start at once." And he starts going across the dance floor very aggressively. So the music
Mhm.
stops playing because he's heading towards the door. And he walks almost right into Cinderella, who goes, "Your Highness, thank you for your kind welcome." And he goes, basically, like, "What?" And she said, "I thought you were coming to greet me." And he kind of catches himself in bad etiquette and goes, "I'm so sorry. Thank you for coming. You just surprised me. I was about to leave." And she says, "In that case, I shouldn't stop you." And he's like, "No, I don't want to leave anymore."
It's a weird meet cute because I don't think that he runs into her. I think that he walks right past her. Like he makes it like 4 steps past her.
Yeah. And she intercepts him by saying, "Thank you for your kind welcome," which is an
Yeah,
interesting opening gambit.
it is. Um it's a bizarre party scene meet cute. It's just really weird.
So he asks her if he may have the pleasure of dancing with her. And she goes, "Well, wouldn't it go better with music?" And he notices that the music has stopped and he gets the music to start. And they dance together in that very courtly style dance to
Mhm.
me.
And we actually get to see her full dress at this point, and it has very long diaphanous sleeves and a very sort of it's a very high collar, but it's not tight to her neck, so it's sort of just a very broad high collar with like a weird rolled edge. Again, aggressively blue and pink. And they have this bizarre interaction where the prince says, "Who are you?" And she says, "Well, can't you tell?" And he asks her to take off the veil. And then we just get a lot of weird point of view shots of them dancing. So we, the camera, just stare directly into the prince's face with his horrible little Bob Pageboy haircut as he gazes vacantly back at us, spinning.
We keep getting intercepts also of little shots of the king and queen commenting on, "Look at her son dance. I can't believe that's my son," and things like that.
Yeah. The king is also clearly very interested in her, just has the king has a lot of, like, "Who is she?" And the queen's like, "You seem like you're more impatient than our son." And he's like, "No, I just want to know who she is."
"Should we invite her up here?" And the queen is like, "No, just let her dance for a bit." And he goes, "With our clumsy son?"
It's
He's worried this girl is gonna get away. Like, the longer she dances with the prince, the bigger the chances that she's just gonna leave, which is correct. That is what happens. The king was right.
it,
They should have
yeah.
gotten married on the spot.
um so she does lift her veil for a second to like scratch her nose or something, but then puts it back down.
I don't think it was to scratch her nose. I think she was just giving the prince like a glance at her face.
Oh, okay, because it was I
But it was
blinked
like
at the
very
wrong
quick.
second.
But it was
Yeah,
very quick, so I don't think it was very helpful to him.
no. So he goes, "Who are you?" And she says, "Why do you care?" And he goes, "Well, I want to know the person I'm going to marry." And she basically responds with a swan princess, "You should probably ask me first." And he goes, "Well, you wouldn't say no." And she says, "I'll give you 3 riddles." None of these are riddles, guys. Face dirty from ashes, but no chimney sweep. Hat with a feather and crossbow, but no huntsman. A dress embroidered in silver and a veil, but not a princess. And the prince is rightfully super confused because this is a terrible riddle. This isn't a riddle. This is not quite as bad as "What have I got in my pocket?" But this isn't a riddle. And she goes, pity. Until you answer my riddle, goodbye." And she just runs away, ripping off her veil as she does.
Yes.
And the prince's two friends flank him like, what just happened? And the prince shakes off his initial shock to run after her. And the king is very concerned, and he's like, "What if he fell in love?" And the queen's like, "That's what you wanted to have happen." And the king goes, "Without my permission?" And the queen says, "Hey, calm down. You disobeyed your parents when you brought me home," which I thought was a great insight into their backstory, which I want to know more about.
Yeah, like they're clearly a love match. It's very cute.
Yeah, oh,
And
it's
the king also notices suddenly that there's no music and roars, "Why is there no music?" And the music starts up again.
great.
Those poor musicians.
Oh my god, that's a terrible gig.
So Cinderella is running down the stairs, and the prince is looking over the railing trying to follow her. And she kind of trips and loses a shoe, and she runs, she keeps running, but then she pauses and turns to go back for it, but then sees that the prince is pretty close now and just turns around and keeps running, gets on her horse, and just rides off.
Which means she's barefoot in the middle of winter in Siberia. Like, it's cold.
This movie
Have
made me feel very cold. Like
this
I
movie
was shivering.
Yeah, this movie just genuinely, I am concerned about everybody's lack of awareness of hypothermia and the dangers thereof. The real villain of this movie is hypothermia.
I love it.
Yep.
So the prince yells to get the horses and they try to follow her, but they get turned around and the guy singing the bird song starts up again in the background. It's not
Yep.
an actual character. I'm so sorry that I made it sound like.
Just
It's
that's
just
the
the
music
song.
that starts again. They're, by the way, chasing her in the middle of night with no lanterns or torches or anything. This would be pitch black. We don't really have a sense much anymore of how incredibly dark the world is when the sun is out, as in like not up, like away when the sun is gone and it's nighttime.
Mhm.
It is so dark without just the light pollution that we are surrounded with. This would be dangerous to ride this fast. Your horse would trip on something because it can't see properly because it's
I
so.
actually have an explanation for this, maybe.
Is it the moon?
No. Wait, never mind. That happens in the summer. I don't have an explanation for this.
Okay.
It's filmed in a kind of twilighty light, so
They've put a blue filter over it. It's clearly the middle of the night. It's very brightly lit for us because they put a blue filter over broad daylight, but
but
it
within the universe.
in universe it would be pitch black and there's no way they could find her.
So Cinderella rides into the gates of her village and closes the gates behind her. And the prince rides up to the gates and starts knocking on the door. And this door is like big enough to pass through while you're on horseback.
Yeah,
So
big
he's
wooden gate
banging on the
thing.
door. Cinderella runs into the house, and all the villagers start coming out after she's already in the house because the prince is just pounding and yelling, "Let me in, let me in." To the point where he breaks open the doors and bursts into the village, and the head servant is like, "What do you want?" And he's holding like a stick, like he's
Oh, they're
this is
responding.
frightening.
Yeah, they're responding the way that you would correctly to a midnight intruder into your safe space.
Yes. And the prince goes, "We haven't come as hostiles," which was an interesting choice for the subtitles, but that's okay.
Yep.
And they ask for the master of the house. They're told that it's a mistress with her daughter and they're at the ball. And he's like, "I'm looking for the beautiful princess." And everyone starts laughing at him.
It's the best.
And they're like, "Oh, a princess, huh?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know if she's a princess, but she's beautiful." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, we got lots of beautiful ladies here."
Make your choice or leave. It's the best.
It's amazing. And the prince's friends are like, "Maybe that's not a bad call. Mornings make for better decisions," which is something I tell Liv like on a semi-regular basis.
There was a line in one of the Russian cartoons we watched, which was, "Go to bed. The morning is wiser than the evening."
Yes.
Talon tells me this on a regular basis. I tell me this on a regular basis. I tell my other friends who are gonna make terrible decisions this on a regular basis. I tell my mother this on a regular basis when she starts having a panic attack. Guys, this is the best advice ever. Go to bed. Don't make that decision late at night. Go to bed.
I say that to myself all the time when I start spiraling or where I'm like, "Oh, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do
Yeah,
that?"
yeah.
I'm like, "No, I'm just gonna go to bed. I can't do anything about it now. I'm gonna handle this tomorrow.
The morning is wiser than the evening. Just
The morning is
that's
wiser than the evening." Anyway, um, so the prince demands to see every girl. And at this point, the villagers are like no longer laughing at him and are just kind of fed up with him. And they're asking, "Who do you think you are?" And they find out he's the prince and are immediately like, "Oh my God, of course, yes, your highness, anything you want."
Yep.
And he goes, "Well, she had a veil and a pink dress." And that's all he's got.
Yep. And he's like, and his friends point this out and they go, "Hey man, you don't know her face or her name. What's your plan here?" And the prince goes, "I have her shoe. Whoever fits the shoe is her."
Well, so he announces the she thing after he's already walked past the line of girls and hasn't recognized any of them.
Yep.
So this does stink of like desperation rather than the first good idea.
Oh
This is
yeah.
just like, I don't know what else to try.
Yeah, this is definitely a last ditch effort. And so he starts trying the shoe on people and we get a beautiful linguistic moment for me. He tries the shoe on someone, it doesn't fit, he goes next and doesn't fit, and he goes next and doesn't fit, and he goes next. But the word for next in Czech sounds like not she.
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't
So
notice that.
yeah, I only noticed it because I heard not she and I was like, why would that be in English? And then I looked at the subtitles and I was like, my brain just gears collided for a little bit while I tried to figure out what in God's name was happening. So not intentional, but I had a great time with that moment.
So the villagers are back to laughing at him and they're saying that that shoe's too small even for a doll. The kitchen boy has quickly thrown a smock on and gotten in line to try on a shoe. And then when the lady in charge of the kitchen kind of pushes him away, he goes, "We have another one over here you haven't tried," and takes her leg out from under her to kind of like pull it up. And she's like laughing and swatting at him.
I missed that part entirely. How did I miss that?
It was incredible. I loved it. And so basically that's it. And the prince is like, "Don't you have anybody else?" And the servant guy goes, "Well, there's Cinderella." And everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Cinderella." So the entire village starts calling her name and is just like together starting to look for her.
Cinderella is upstairs at an upper window, sort of watching this, and she closes the window sort of surreptitiously. The stepmother and stepsister have arrived at this point, but sneakily, and are just making their
Well, the
presence.
doors are wide open.
Well, yes, but they've come in surreptitiously. No one has noticed them, and they are just hanging out in the back in her very stealthy, bright white umbrella hat. Basically, the stepmother figures out what's going on, and ominous music plays as they sneak into the house through the same door that Cinderella took. And they grab a torch and some rope. And
Mhm.
the stepsister is like, "What are we doing?" And the stepmom's like, "Just follow me." Just and
We just cut the scene. Like they come up to the door, they open it, and then we switch scenes. And we don't see what happens to Cinderella.
well, she says, "Ah, there you are." And then we
Yes.
switch scenes. So they definitely find her. She's in a room with only one door. They have rope and a torch.
And ill intentions.
Yeah, so this could go in a bunch of ways because this is not Disney, y'all. So I was a little bit concerned the first time I watched this. Turns out okay.
So then we cut back to the kitchen and they're all looking for her. The kitchen boy is looking inside the fireplace. He's got
Thank
like his
you.
entire head and shoulders wedged inside of it.
Yes, I saw that too. I was like, "What?" In the oven, yeah. So they search through the kitchen, they're calling her name. They search through the stables. The main servant guy feels her horse, which is in the stables, and sees that it is still damp with sweat and tells someone to take care of it. And then the main servant guy notices something and says, "Oh, look at that." And it is the stepmother leading somebody in a pink veil cloak thing and dress down the stairs sneakily.
Yeah. I mean, it's clearly not Cinderella,
It's
but it's meant
obviously
to
not
look
Cinderella.
but it's meant to look like Cinderella.
Yes, and the her face is hidden. So
Yes.
sure. So she's now thankfully taken off her umbrella hat because I couldn't. I don't think I
It's
could have
hard
handled
to
it.
take her seriously.
It really is, guys. If you don't do anything, just look up a screenshot of this. I don't know how. Maybe we can like include one in the show notes. I might find that and try to do that because, guys, this is the best hat. Sorry, where were we?
So the girl in the pink cloak, it's Dora. I'm not gonna
It's
be
Dora.
coy about this.
Yeah.
Dora is placed inside the sled facing away from the prince. And the stepmother is basically like, why do you want to know who she is? Why were you searching for her? And the prince is like, well, I was trying to find her so I could marry her. And she's like, okay, you can marry her.
I'll marry her then. Ask her then.
And he's like, well, why can't I look at her? Why can't I talk to her? And the stepmother goes, don't you get it? She's shy. And noting that there's something suspicious, the servant guy says to one of the prince's friends, let her try the pump on. And the prince is like, yes, I want her to try on the shoe. And the
Mhm.
stepmother takes the shoe out of his hand, gets in the carriage, and they drive away. It was
It's
incredible.
it's amazing. It's great. And the prince is as floored by this as we were. Just there's a moment of confusion all around.
So the prince chases after them on his horse, and the stepmother goes, he's behind us. In the end, he'll do as I want. And he's chasing them through these snowing fields for a really long time.
Yep, this is our
And
third chase.
yes. And eventually the sled kind of capsizes into something that's either a pond or a melted puddle of ice that is now water. It's not deep, it's about knee deep, but they're surrounded by slushy ice. And the stepmother and stepsister are in the water trying to get out
Yeah, they're
while their
soaked.
driver has been propelled into a tree.
And their very heavy sleigh is upside down in the water with them.
Yes.
Um, and they are, you know, rightfully very upset about this. The prince races over, grabs Dora's hand, hauls her out of the water, sees that it is Dora, not Cinderella, takes the shoe from her, and throws her back into the frozen lake to die of hypothermia.
Quite possibly, he says, you are not my bride. And he walks away.
He walks away.
He just
They're
metaphorically washes his hands of this. It's no
yeah,
longer his problem.
nope, because their horses have also run off. Their servants in a tree. At this point, the prince is looking very dejected, but Rosie the owl shows up to fly around him. He's never met this owl, but he smiles at it as if to thank it and sort of nods at it and then rides back to town. The servant, meanwhile, has extricated himself from whatever bush tree thing he was in and
This is
tries.
not our friend servant guy who we
No,
like. This
this
is
is the
just a random servant.
this is the bailiff. Actually, he gets called
Yes.
bailiff. So he goes over to try to help pull them out, but they all fall in.
And that's the last we see of them.
We will never see them again.
I choose to believe that they got out and that they were very close to the village and had just been going in big circles around it.
Oh no, they die and drown in that pond.
No,
There
no,
are
I think they're
corpses in.
fine.
No, there are corpses.
I think
That
they get pneumonia and they're very sick for a while and then they get better and it's fine.
I mean, if you get pneumonia in the 1400s, you also die.
I think they just have a bad cold for a while and then they're fine. I
How are
really think they're fine.
how are you the happy one? How are you the
I
light one?
just
Why am I the dark one now? What happened?
anyway,
Anyway.
so servant guy who we like is still looking for Cinderella and he's like she couldn't have disappeared like that and he comes to her door and breaks it down and he sees like the pink veil on the bed and he hears through the window the la 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 song And he goes, "It's Cinderella." And he and all the other servants look out the window,
Mm,
but we don't see what they're seeing.
it's just there's nothing there. She's not in a room. She is, in fact, in her little stable loft thing again, which is not within eyesight of this room.
She's
Um,
also just wearing like her underclothes, which are like, will you describe them?
yeah, she's just wearing a chemise and a pink skirt. The pink skirt, by the way, is too full to have fit under the fancy dress that she was wearing, and the chemise has long sleeves, which would have shown under the diaphanous sleeves that she was wearing also. So
That's what I've always been curious about.
she's just wearing different clothes. She's clearly wearing things that you would wear under a fancy dress, but very clearly things that she was not wearing under the fancy dress that she was wearing.
Yes. I thought that
So
was so strange.
it's very strange. The more you think about it, the stranger it gets. And
Unless they
so
made her switch clothes with with
with
Dora.
Dora, maybe. I mean, they did have time. Maybe
Yeah,
she's wearing Dora's. No, those wouldn't have fit under. Dora had diaphanous sleeves as well.
I give up.
We give up. She's wearing special underclothes. I don't know. And she takes her last hazelnut and drops it again, sort of closes her eyes and drops it again, and it makes the cutest little ding sound every time these things fall. It's great. And it makes another dress. She sort of gets on her knees to sort of cuddle the dress and is like, it's a wedding dress. Sure.
And then we cut to the owl and we just have a long shot of the owl's face.
Yeah, the owl just blinks at her. So the prince rides back to the village. It's morning now, which means if this dude woke up at a reasonable hour, he's been up for a solid 24 hours, at least 4 hours of which was a party, and he's been on a horse chase. So
Poor
this guy's had a
guy.
rough day. Like, this is a rough 24 hours.
Yeah.
And his friends come up to him and go, well, and he just nods sadly at them as though he didn't just murder two people.
3.
Three, well, he didn't know about the servant.
Yeah.
He'd left at that point. So the friends go, okay, maybe we should go back. And he
They'll be
looks,
worried at the palace.
yeah, and he looks sadly at the shoe in his hand. And then our kitchen boyfriend hears a neigh and looks up in shock. And it is Cinderella in her wedding dress riding her horse across the village courtyard. The wedding dress is very pretty. It's got
Mm-hmm.
sort of a scoop cut neckline. It's silvery. It's got puffy sleeves that are puffed in multiple places. It looks kind of like Princess Buttercup's wedding dress from the end of The Princess Bride, but with puffier
Mm.
sleeves.
It's also very like jeweled
Very
or
jeweled, very
embroidered.
yeah, it's got heavy embroideries, but it has that sort of feel to it, and it's got a long sort of flowy veil train part. She's also wearing this blue beaded necklace with this just massive enamel blue flower in the middle of it. Like like you would get from Claire's. Just
I didn't notice that at all. That's so funny.
ah, we have the most interesting things we focus on. So the prince is delighted and he goes, "Oh, it's her." And he runs over to her and she goes, "Did you bring my shoe?" And he gives her the shoe and she takes the ring from her hand that was the huntsman's ring and gives it to him and goes, "Did you get my riddle?" And then she walks him through each riddle as he laboriously reaches the conclusion that all three of those people, the little girl with the sooty face in the forest who made fun of him, and the huntsman who outshot him, and the beautiful girl at the ball, are all her. And he takes his time getting to this conclusion.
And now he knows her name because while they were all calling for Cinderella, he kind of shrugged and joined in and started calling for Cinderella. Actually, in that moment, he doesn't even say it. Never mind.
No, at that moment, she says, "They were all me." And the line is weird, but basically what he says is, "Will you be mine too if you want me?" Basically,
Oh,
he.
No, so the village starts yelling, "Our Cinderella, our Cinderella,"
Oh, okay. That's what happens. Because I was like, what?
in answer to the riddle, like, "Who is it?" And
Who
they're
is
all
it?
like, "It's our Cinderella."
Oh, right. Okay.
And
That
that's
makes
why the
more sense
prince is
then.
like, "And mine too, if you want me." And she
Which is
like
nice.
nods.
She nods. And he picks her up and spins her around, and the servants all throw their hats in the air. And we get the little bird song again, and we get a really romantic ending. Cinderella and the prince are riding through the snowy fields on their horses, holding hands. It's beautifully shot. They're white. Her horse is white. His horse is this beautiful dapple gray. Her dress has this beautiful flowy train thing that's just sort of blowing. It's just very pretty. And in the middle of this romantic moment, I can't. You do
In the middle of this romantic moment, the tutor pops up, and
it.
from a distance he yells, "Your Highness, history lesson is about to begin." And the prince turns this horse around, kind of laughs, and then goes back to follow Cinderella, who's a little bit ahead of him now. And then they ride off into not the sunset, but just the distance.
They ride off over the hill. It looks like she throws one more snowball at him in this moment because something white and snowy flies in his direction, although it doesn't look like she throws it. So I don't know what that was, but I like to believe that she threw one last snowball at him.
I'm sure in their marriage, she will continue to throw many a snowball at him.
So they ride off over the hilltop, and then we just look at the empty landscape with a big cloud behind it for a while, for like a solid 45 seconds.
While the
And
song finishes.
while the song finishes, and then we get the end and the credits start to roll. So so there we are. The
That's
end.
it. That's the end.
That's the end. That was great. I loved it. Highs and lows, Talon.
Okay. My high and my low are in very close proximity to each other
Okay.
because my high is the Huntsman scene. I love when she turns up in that outfit. I love that she's like an incredible sharpshooter. I love that the prince puts the ring on her finger. Like that entire scene is my favorite scene. I think they're flirting. I think it's cute. I
Mhm.
hate the fox scene that precedes it. I
Yeah.
wish we didn't linger on the fox dying.
Oh, yeah. Because it's not just that they
They
shoot the
show
fox,
us after.
and they show us the fox alive, chewing at the arrow, and then they show us like displaying the fox, but it's already immediately in rigor mortis. It's like a very stiff fox. So it's horrible.
Yeah,
It's
I
the
don't
worst.
like it.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah,
I It's my low.
that is also my low. Normally I don't like to pick the same low, but this movie is delightful, except for that one scene. You could just cut those, especially because when he goes to hunt the deer, she hits the snowball at him and he
Yeah, and
doesn't kill the
nothing bad
deer.
happens. We don't have to watch a deer being hunted.
Yeah, and so you're like, oh, they're chasing a fox. I bet she. Nope, nope,
Mm-mm.
dead fox. So, yeah, low is definitely the fox scene. High, I love so many things about this movie. Just it was such a delight. This is going to be a weirdly specific high, and it's just because everything is at a very high level, but this just brought me so much joy for so long. My high is the umbrella hat. Just I love how sassy Cinderella is. I love how beautifully everything is shot. I love the use of film. I love that she is, I love that she aggressively sweeps ashes at them. I love that she has like kitchen boyfriends and how she talks to her animals. But that umbrella hat, man, that's gonna bring me joy for so long.
It's such a memorable hat.
So, what would you change about this movie?
Yeah, it's the fox scene. I would
Yes.
use like a discretion cutaway shot, and
Yeah.
they never have to show it to us again.
Yeah.
Like they can show him
They can just
like
show the
aiming,
dogs.
yeah,
You
and
did
then they
because
can just be like, "Congratulations, Prince, you got the fox. Let's move on."
they don't even have to show the fox. They could just show the dogs baying, chasing something, and then
Yes.
be like, "Congratulations, Prince, good shot." And I'm like, "Great, that's fine. That's fine."
What
So
about
since,
you?
well, obviously that, but also I would change the scene where the prince and his friends, the three of them, catch her. I don't know how I would change that scene. but I would make it different. I would have them not corner her in such an aggressive way, or have her be, again, somewhere slightly above them or out of their physical reach, because it just has a very predatory feel to it, and I don't like it.
Mhm. Or
Because
to show her laughing as she runs through the woods,
oh yeah, or have her,
or throw more snowballs at them as she runs.
yeah,
Like,
or something, because it feels weirdly predatory, partially because they've never seen her. They just randomly see this girl and decide to just stalk her like prey. And also she's very young. She's like 16 and they're clearly not 16. It's not big enough of an age difference to be like icky or weird on screen the way that one Selena Gomez Cinderella
mhm.
was. But like,
Yeah, they look like they might be 19. She looks like she might be about 16.
yeah, 16, 19, 16, 20, whatever. It's fine. But like, it's old enough to make a difference when you've got three older guys just converge. It was,
Yeah, I
I didn't
hear
like
you.
it. Yeah. So, do you think our listeners should watch this?
Yeah, I think everyone should watch this.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm too biased when I say that this is like a very, very good Cinderella and like you should watch it.
yeah, no, agreed. This is a very good Cinderella, probably for different reasons than Talon thinks this is a very good Cinderella.
Oh,
Um,
quite possibly.
Quite possibly, but agreed. I do not have any nostalgic ties to this, from my childhood. But this is a delight. It's a fun movie. It's a fairly fast watch. It's just a really interesting spin on a familiar story. It's easy to find on YouTube. It's free with subs. It's creative and it's got some really great characterizations.
If you
It's
like your Cinderella with a lot of agency, this is a good movie for you.
yeah, if you yes. Also, if you're really into animals. If you love the horse girl Cinderella, you will enjoy this one.
Oh, or if you like cross-dressing in your movies, this is
Mhm.
a Cinderella with cross-dressing.
Yeah, this is a great movie. Will you be watching this again, Talon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, also absolutely. Like, this is a delightful movie. It's so much fun.
So when I was reading up on it, it said that in a bunch of European countries, it's actually really popular as a holiday movie. So I
Aw,
think I might be adopting this as my like winter holiday traditions because it is like very wintry.
it is.
So I might be watching it in a few short months.
I love it. I already have like two movies that are my winter holiday movies, but I'm perfectly open to adding a third. So, final grade.
Oh, it's an A+. I even with the fox scene for me, it's an A+. I love this movie.
Yeah, when we first went through this one, I think I gave it an A, like when we just watched it
Hmm.
unofficially to begin with. And I think I'm still giving it an A. There are enough things wrong with it technically that I could give it an A minus,
Hmm.
but I don't feel the need to be parsimonious with my praise. They did a lot of really great things. I really liked the king and queen interactions. I loved the tutor. The tutor is so funny and for no reason. I loved the prince and his terrible friends and their hilariously homoerotic snowball fights.
There was a lot of snow cuddling.
Yeah, lots of snow cuddling. Then we don't get a kiss though, which is weird.
Oh yeah.
We don't get a kiss. This is
I like
the
that they hold hands though.
I do. It's a very nice romantic, right off into the it's not a sunset, but
Right
weirdly
off into the cloud.
right off into the giant hostile cloud. Yeah, this is a lovely movie. Well done.
Well, it's almost midnight, so thanks for joining us. If you liked this episode, please leave us a rating or a review. We'd love to hear from you, so follow us at CinderPod on Twitter and Instagram, like our Facebook page, or email us at thecinderellapodcast@gmail.com. If you want bibbity bobbity bonus episodes, or to hear us discuss this week's Cinderella, but with more adult questions, language, and beverages, join us in the Ever After Party at patreon.com/CinderPod. Our intro music is Bad Ideas by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. So, Liv, what are we watching next week?
Next week, we're watching a much lesser known version of Cinderella called The Rough-Faced Girl. Um,
Ooh.
I'm really excited about this. It was made in 2008. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be terrible. At this point, I don't remember if it's animated or not because I made this list a while ago now. But I hope this isn't one of the terrible ones that I found.
Me too.
Me too. Anyways, it's only 24 minutes, so if it's that bad, at least it will be short.
Well, until then, we hope you have a happily ever after.